Hi y'all, and welcome to the Paul Chandler Show. I'm your host, Paul Chandler. And tonight we're going to learn how to code excisions from the musculoskeletal system. Because we have 206 bones in our body, however, even though we have that many bones, there's still two simple formats on how the procedure codes go for coding the excisions. So stay tuned and we'll be right back and we'll be coding excisions for the musculoskeletal system. Welcome back, everyone. Now, when we're coding excisions for the musculoskeletal system, there's either 3 or 5 variables that we have to look at as far as the coding. And I'll say the phrase this, comma, this, comma, this, as in this meaning each of the variables. So we're going to be looking at 3 different CPT codes and showing how, at least with the excisions, that they're carbon copied throughout the musculoskeletal system. And carbon copied, for those of you who think that the pound symbol is a hashtag, a little tic-tac-toe symbol. See, way back when, probably in your parents, like caveman days, when we would get detention in school, then, or a little note home written to your parents, what they would do in the office is write it on paper. Think of paper as like a really, really skinny iPad screen from trees. They would write on the top level with a pen, and then it would soak through, and it would magically appear on multiple copies underneath it. You'd have like 3 or 4 different color paper all together. So when you write through one, on the top, it would go through the others. That's how, like on your emails, it says CC, that it means carbon copy. You're sending it to other people. Now that we've had that history lesson, so with carbon copying, as in the excisions, so we're going to look at 3 different CPT codes. 21011, 23075, and then finally 25075. And we're going to compare these 3 CPT codes. Now, not every code has all 5 variables. Sometimes they just have 3. So I'll be using 2 different color markers. I'll be using blue for the 3 variables that every excision code will have. And I'll be using red for the addition of the other 2. So if we look at code 21011, we have excision. So all of the CPT codes for the excisions in musculoskeletal system, the first of this is excision. The example 21011, excision, comma, tumor. So we have in this case, what are we cutting out? Bringing back to the good old days of like who, what, where, why, when, and how of a story. If you remember that back in grade school. So excision, comma, tumor, what are we cutting out? And back to 21011, comma, soft tissue of face and scalp. So in this case, 21011 is in the head section in the musculoskeletal system. So the location would be somewhere in the head location. So 21011, dealing with the soft tissue of face and scalp. So that gives us the where. Now it becomes the difference as far as these 2 variables are not in every excision code. But going back to our first code again, 21011. So far we have excision, comma, what are we cutting out? A tumor. Comma, where are we cutting it out at? Soft tissue of face and scalp. But then 21011, comma, subcutaneous. So then we have the depth. And then finishing up our first code, 21011, less than 2 centimeters. So that gives us the size. And you can look at 21011 and see that the parent code, 21011, is less than 2 centimeters for the size. The only next variable is the kid code, is 2 centimeters or greater. So scrolling through the head section and the musculoskeletal, so with 21011, you see how all the entire format is this, comma, this, sometimes comma this, and sometimes comma this. So it'll either be 3 variables or 5. We'll never have 1, 2, 4. It's just always 3 or the 5. And for example, like if you continue on, see excision of the bone of the mandible. Mandible being the jaw. We don't care the depth, we don't care the size. So take a few moments, and pause this if you'd like, but not for long. Compare 21011 through let's say 21,011 with 23,075. Comparing all the variables, 21,011, 23,075, both are excisions, comma, both what are we cutting out? We're cutting out a tumor, comma, where, both are subcutaneous. And in this case, the depth is the subcutaneous, but the where is a little bit different. Because 21,011, we're looking at the head area, but 23,075, we're in the shoulder area. So that where is different based on what section of the CPT book that we're in. Like I just mentioned though, the depth is the same for subcutaneous, and the size is the same but different. It's the same as in we have a parent code for a smaller number and a kit code for a larger number. But in this case, 21,011 switches over for less than 2 centimeters, while 23,075 is less than 3 centimeters. But it's still the same concept, again, where we have a parent code for a smaller number and a kit code for a larger number. And then we can also add into the mixture to compare 25,075. Excision, comma, tumor, what are we cutting out at? A tumor. In this case, the where, forearm and or wrist area. So the where is different because different locations. In the musculoskeletal system, the depth is still subcutaneous, that's the same. And the size, we still again have a parent code for a smaller number and a kit code for a larger number. So no matter where you're looking at in the musculoskeletal system, for example, we see the excisions starting out at the depth. The first group is always the subcutaneous option, but then the next parent code is superficial. As far as the depth going a little bit more down to actually subfacial. And that just goes to show you that even with medical terminology, superficial, subfacial, you gotta make sure you get all the letters correct, because what I meant to say was subfacial. So the 21,011, 23,075, and 25,075. Both of those are the first codes for excisions in those sections based on the location, where the depth we have as subcutaneous, but then the next parent code that we have down is for subfacial, again, deeper down. So every single excision code, no matter where it's at in the body, will always have the 3 variables in blue. Excision, comma, where are we cutting it out at, based on the individual locations. So the excisions, comma, what are we cutting out? Tumor, malignant tumor, abscess, or whatnot. So it's always excision, comma, what are we cutting out, comma, where are we cutting it out at, based on individual musculoskeletal sections. Remember in the CPT book, that's the red header. If we scroll back the codes, we stop at the red header for the locations. Each of the codes will have the first 3 variables. Depending on what we're cutting out and where, then they'll also have the depth and the size. That's part of the reason why, too, the musculoskeletal system is such a big section, but once you're able to grasp the excisions in one section, then carbon copy, you're able to understand it in all the other sections. All that we're doing is changing out the what, depending on what we're cutting out, the where, based on what group of the body or sometimes a bone area that we're coding. For the excision, sometimes you just have the 3, other times you have to add in also the 2 more for the depth and the size. And that's how you code excisions in the CPT book for the musculoskeletal system. I thank you for watching this episode of the Paul Chandler Show, and have an awesome rest of your night. If you like this video and want to see more, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's so easy. It's right there. A little button. Just push it. Subscribe. I got all night. Nothing else to do. Just subscribe.